out to Temple David, to Temple Bethel, City Island, to Reformed Temple of Putnam Valley, to the CCR Press, who all said yes. So I really do want to be as participatory as possible. If you raise your emoji hand, it's easier for me to see it. But otherwise, you're going to be able to see the chat will be watched and all of that. So if you have something that comes up, you can certainly put it in, and Mara will help us out. Learning is always deeper the more voices we have, and even though we only have 45 minutes, we're as much interaction as we can have. Let's do it. So let's get right into it. I begin text study with a blessing. If you want to join me, please do. La'asok b'divrei Torah, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So, which translates as, blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who makes us holy with commandments and commands us to engage with words of Torah. So where are we? We are in this cycle of Haftarot, which come before and after Tisha B'Av, and all are from the book of Isaiah. So we have Haftarah, quick recap from Rabbi Lauren Tuckman, who taught last week, means it's from the word for close or depart, conclusion. It's a conclusionary reading from the prophets. It comes after the Torah cycle. And these are all related to Tisha B'Av. I like to retranslate Haftarah as punctuating the moment in time or the sacred text, because I think that it's not just, oh, that was nice, but let's see what we can do with that. So I'll invite that in a few minutes. So the three Haftarah before Tisha B'Av are of rebuke, and the 7 after are of consolation. So had Israel acted in a different way, the temples wouldn't have been destroyed, first by the Babylonians, later by the Romans, and then we are consoled through the voices of prophets. So we're in this part of the consolation cycle. So let's just see what we can do here. We're gonna test drive the emoji hand thing. Why are there more Haftarot of consolation than there are of rebuke? And we're not going to get into the theology of, what do we do with the fact that it was seen as the Israelites' fault that God allowed a different nation to overtake and to destroy the temple and so forth. We're not going to go down there, but it's a good thing to go down because it's something to wrestle with. But why more consolation, 7, than rebuke, 3? Any thoughts? Just raise your emoji hand. If you want to write in the chat, you can, and Mara's going to help us. No one's saying anything.
We'll go to Beth. I see Beth's emoji hand.
Great. Beth, what do you got? Why more consolation?
I think that we need consolation more than we need rebuke. And I think that also, if we think of the various attributes that we assign to God, we'd like to think of God as being more merciful than strict. Liberty.
Lovely. Thank you. And if we think of also the human side of things, right, then we know it takes a long time to be consoled, right, and to offer consolation. It just takes a lot of time. So write in the chat, if you would, please, what works, right? How do you console someone or experience consolation? Because it's really what Isaiah is trying to do. So I think we have to sort of come human to start with and then go kind of prophetic, not that he's not human. But if you would, just take a second, write in the chat, showing up, hug, listening, empathy. Empathy is a hard one, right? Especially if we didn't experience something similar, right? Sympathy, empathy, being heard. Truly present. More than what you don't say, than what you do say. Despite tragedy, God is there and cares. So fabulous answer. So what I want to do is I want to actually start my screen sharing, which might make it mean that I can't see the chat anymore, with apologies, but that's where Mara has to do some work today. So what I want to do, oh, that didn't work at all. Hold on, is get to my PowerPoint. That's kind of embarrassing. All right, nope, that's not it. Okay, we're just going to go the old-fashioned way here. So this is who I am. This is the date we're on. We don't need that anymore. So when we look at, if it's going to advance, there it is. Okay. This is Caring Bridge, which you might know. And I thought, so what are steps of consolation? So being there for them, telling them and showing them that you love them, let them know you're thinking of them, take time to listen. A hug can speak volumes, share memories and stories, and continue offering support. So Caring Bridge, right, is a company, right, that tries to help people. A lot of you probably use this, but the idea being that, first of all, a lot of what you said showed up here, right? And these are natural, and they're not necessarily hard to do in terms of resources. It might be hard to do in a lot of other ways. So when we get into this, we want to think about how we console and are consoled differently depending on the situation. I think the main questions regarding the text we're about to study is, for what are we being consoled? And do, or even maybe how do, I can be a little radical on that kind of thing, Isaiah's words bring us comfort. Do they bring us comfort, right? Is it working? So we know that the temple was the focus of Jewish life. It's been destroyed. So their world is upside down. Many Jews have been exiled to Babylonia, who are the conquerors, including Isaiah. This is in the 6th century BCE, before the Common Era. But yet, it was after Cyrus the Mede conquered Babylon and issued a proclamation permitting the restoration of subject peoples under his domain. So there's a little bit of a light here in terms of where we are. And there are different opinions exactly of when second Isaiah lived. It doesn't seem exactly like he was a he, but a little unclear in terms of the background to that, but that's where you want to go back and listen to last week's session, which was very well done. So Isaiah uses the toolkit of a prophet. He helps us to hear him, and I want to use that frame, the toolkit of a prophet, because we actually see in a way the prophet's job description. It's not exactly clear if this refers to Isaiah himself. He's not usually, forgive this, but a complainer so much, unlike some of the other prophets. It could be referring to the people of Israel, which is probably more of what Jewish tradition accepts to be the case. It could be referring to the Messiah to come. And in Christian tradition, it actually could be referring to Jesus. So you can decide for yourself in terms of what you're seeing. So I want to look at sort of, this is not the very beginning of the portion, but it gives okay, what's kind of the role of a prophet? How does this work in? And whether it's specifically I as Isaiah, or I as kind of, this body of Israel speaking. Let's see what we have here. So if someone's willing to read these 2 verses, we're going to stick with English, but I always believe in giving you the Hebrew. And the translations are from Sefaria, as I noted on the bottom. So anyone want to read? You're going to hear my voice the whole time, otherwise. All right, I'll do this one, but then I have name. Oh, yay. All right, now we're going. Here we go. Okay, so Laura, would you please?
My sovereign God gave me a skilled tongue to know how to speak timely words to the weary. Morning by morning, God rouses me, rousing my ear to give heed like disciples. My sovereign God opened my ears, and I did not disobey. I did not run away.
Thank you. So let's look at what's happening here. And I could have highlighted other words too, right? Skilled tongue. timely words to the weary, right? So you have to be able to speak in a way to get attention. You have to speak in a timely way to the people who are just tired of hearing it. So whether we're thinking of maybe our own political situation, whatever it is, how is it that you get people's attention, right? God rouses me and it opens my ears, and I'm sticking with it. I'm not running away. By the way, I just have to say, because I think it's really interesting, the open my ears is actually from an idiom from Akkadian, which is the ancient language spoken in Babylonia. And so here you are, right? In a sense, you're picking up the local dialect, even though you don't want to be in Babylon, but you can't help but picking up some of what's happening there. And also, in a way, you might be speaking more to the next generation, because they're the ones who, Akkadian might be, as it were, their first language because of where they were born. So it's interesting. Isaiah chooses words that is really able to be heard. So if we continue then to the next, so Laura, would you continue, please? You'll find it. We have faith in you.
No, at first I couldn't.
I know, that's why I said, go ahead.
I offered my back to the floggers and my cheeks to those who tore out my hair. I did not hide my face from insult and spittle, but my sovereign God will help me. Therefore, I feel no disgrace. Therefore, I have set my face like flint, and I know I shall not be shamed.
All right, so he's sticking with this, right? He's got God on your side, which in order to be a prophet, that's the first level of job description. God has called you. You don't just get to say, oh, okay, I'm going to be a prophet now. That is not how this works. But he's going to really summon his courage and move forward with that. So if we continue on, do we have a different reader? Margot, I saw your hand up. Okay.
There we go. My vindicator is at hand. Who dares contend with me? Let us stand up together. Who would be my opponent? Let them approach me. Lo, my sovereign God will help me. Who can get a verdict against me? They shall wear out like a garment. The moth shall consume them.
So we have this right, again, this kind of strength, and God is by my side, and really, are you, come at it, right? Come at it. And there's a certain strength. And remember, these are people who are in exile, whose whole world was turned upside down. It's not like you can build a temple over there, right? And so while they see this little light at the end of the tunnel that maybe they get to go home and rebuild, they're still in this place. So if we continue on, let us hear from Diane, would you please? You're muted.
Okay, I was trying to unmute. Who among you reveres God and heeds the voice of the appointed servant? Though walking in darkness and having no light, let them trust in the name of God and rely upon his God.
Okay, so I want to make a comment about how you choose a Haftarah. And the Haftarah starts in the middle of one chapter in 49:14 of Isaiah and finishes in 51:3. So it's skipping around a little bit, right? It's interesting to me when the rabbis choose any Haftarahs, well, why'd they pick this one, right? Why does it start here? And for a Haftarah that's not related to the season, but to the Torah portion, how come they picked it to connect to that part of the Torah portion and not the other part of the Torah portion, right? So there are different kinds of pieces to that in terms of how does Haftarah work? So here in the middle of our portion, we have this whole thing about Isaiah, or maybe Israel, but sort of the most immediate feels like it's about Isaiah himself. What is that about? And the thought might be that he uses his own life as an example of how he was vindicated by God. These people are suffering in Babylon, right? Weeping by the waters, right, as it were. And so Isaiah said, hey, here I am, right? Example right here of how one can be vindicated. And so that is interesting as a way of saying, okay, right, you can see this in action. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through some of the themes in this Haftarah. So we're not going to go exactly in order, though I will start at the beginning because it's a very good place to start. So let me find where there it is. Okay, so at the very beginning, Annette, you want to read our first verse for us, please? If you could unmute.
Zion says, God has forsaken me. My sovereign has forgotten me.
Interesting, right? So of course we're thinking, well, what's Zion, right? Is Zion Jerusalem particularly? Is Zion Israel as a whole? Ongoing debates about this kind of thing, but it's singular, right? So the verb here, vatomer, right? God, Zion says is singular, right? That we are all in this together, right? So it personifies the people of Zion. Right. And it complements in a sense, or maybe contrast is even a better sense, Lamentations, right? Which is the book that is from the writing section of the Hebrew Bible that is read on Tisha B'Av. So Lamentations 1:1 says, alas, lonely sits the city, once great with people. She that was great among nations is become like a widow. The princess among states has become a thrall, right? So we have this opposing notion, sorry, not opposing notion yet, the complementary notion of, yeah, right? Oh gosh, God has left us behind, just like from Tisha B'Av. And by the way, we can also see in it old mythological tropes about the relationships between deities and their cities, right? And so compliments to the New Jewish Publication Society's commentary for bringing that forward as well, is that in a lot of ways, right, our Adonai is different, and in other ways there is some kind of parallelism to other ancient cities. But so here comes the comfort, and we're going to use the prophet's toolkit, right? It begins, God has forsaken me, right? I'm forgotten, right? We probably at some points ourselves, if we go human on this, know what it feels like to be forsaken and forgotten, right? So if we go into the next slide, and that is when all of a sudden I forgot how to get my slides moving forward. There it is. Okay. We have this example from Isaiah of rhetorical questions. So rhetorical questions are a big way forward. I only gave you a couple of them, but think about the impact of a rhetorical question. So I'll just read this one real quick. Can a woman forget her baby or disown the child of her womb? Right. So we're thinking, no, right? Obviously, no. With that, that you don't even have to really answer that question. And then it's kind of an all the more so, though she might forget, I, God, could never forget you, right? So even though it's rhetorical, there's still an answer to it. There's still a follow-up. And so we have, by the way, interesting, right, in terms of merachem, forget her right, to forget her baby, disown the child of her womb, is actually from the same root as rechem, which is uterus, which by the way is also compassion. So that if you're reading this in Hebrew, even just picking out a word here or there, right? We know rachamim, rachmanis, right? We're hearing, oh, wait a minute, we know this word. But this idea of rhetorical questions comes up in another example. I'm hoping someone's going to read it as I advance the slide. So this is from Isaiah 50, verse 2. Anyone want to read?
Yeah, my hand is up.
Annette, your hand's still up in here. Oh, okay. Wait, we're going to get
Yes.
a new reader. Sharon, would you please?
No, yes.
Okay. The use of rhetorical questions, Isaiah 50.2. Why, when I came, was no one there? Why, when I called, would none respond? Is my arm then too short to rescue? Have I not the power to save? With a mere rebuke, I dry up the sea and turn rivers into desert. Their fish stink from lack of water. They lie dead of thirst.
Probably makes us think about the crossing of the sea, right? Our big redemption moment. And here, Isaiah is saying, but in a sense, God's words, right? Hey, where is everybody, right? Where'd you go? Do you think I can't pull this off? Do you really think that I can't get you back to back from Babylonia to Jerusalem? Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way, right? But this idea of rhetorical questions captures our attention, right? There are also the stages of an argument within this text. So while there are more questions here, more rhetorical questions, I just want to use this as an example of the way that Isaiah is leading us through using different methods. Okay, so Mara, are we good? Any comments, any questions?
We're all good.
All right, I hope that's good, as long as everyone, sticks with it. So here we go. So another example of how Isaiah is trying to comfort us, remember, that's the key, because we're getting back to this, of comfort, is we want to make sure that we are figuring out if we feel comforted or not. Okay, Sarah, were you going to read, or are you asking a question? You're going to read. Okay, fabulous. So I got something for you to read. We're good. The next one we're going to use is metaphor. So here we go. Would you mind? We already read this, but I want to look at this again. So please, Sarah.
Can a woman forget her baby or disown the child of her womb? Though she might forget, I never could forget you.
Okay, thank you. So on the one hand, we looked at this very briefly, but how does this metaphor work for you? If Isaiah is trying to get your attention now in 2020, 2024, what does this metaphor do for you? Do you say, oh my gosh, right, I connect to this? Or is it not quite so connecting? I'm going to let you think about that, because I want to do one other text related to this woman, as it were. And so we're going to look at, oh, I did it wrong. Sorry. Wait, I have to just find where I am. Right. So we're gonna tell you this. Sorry, I thought I had it on the slide. So 26 verses after the children have returned, it says, "You shall don them all like jewels, deck yourself with them like a bride." So the children who have been taken away, who have disappeared, presumably not forgotten, right? Again, the verse in 18 is, "You shall don them all like jewels, deck yourself with them like a bride." So a little bit of lighthearted, because, sometimes you just have to go lighthearted. Here we go, the sacred text of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. obviously, we see the joy of this. I'm going to hope I can get back to my PowerPoint now that I did that. We see the joy of them coming home. And we, as silly in a sense, but right, I wanted to see the expressions, right? When we really think of donning our children like joy, like jewels, right? Of, you know, of embracing them, and they were right, so exquisite. That we have to note, of course, that whatever age children are, that we are waiting for the hostages to come home. So we recognize that as joyous as that was, that when we see this image, when we think of this image that Isaiah brings forward in this moment of time, we have to connect into this idea that there are children, whatever age they are that are not yet home. So may they come home. So we are going to continue with the text again with this sense of metaphor. And we're going to continue with, if you're a Shabbat service goer like Lecha Dodi, right, this image of God and the Jewish people being married. So let's take a look at this, and we'll see if we have a reader. Diane, your hand is still up. Does that mean you're willing to do it? All right, we're ready.
Thus said God, where is the bill of divorce of your mother whom I dismissed? And which of my creditors was it to whom I sold you off? You were only sold off for your sins, and your mother dismissed for your crimes.
Okay. So God didn't actually divorce us, just dismissed us, right? For some of us, this is actually a problematic metaphor, but back then a metaphor takes, well, now too, a metaphor takes something very well known and it transfers it where you don't have to start into a lot of descriptions. So you just take it forward. Here, if it's a problematic metaphor, we get in a little bit of trouble. So Reverend Dr. Renita Weems wrote about Old Testament prophets, as she labels it, since she is a pastor and in the Christian tradition. And I just want to share with you some of her words really quickly. Why should I, as a reader, leave the world where I presently live, where violence against wives is unjustifiable, to inhabit a world where violence against wives is taken for granted? The marriage metaphor is useless, therefore, for shedding light on the theological question of punishment and judgment. So she was actually, I usually associate more with the Hosea text, but here, right, if the woman's dismissed, right, sold off, you know, whatever it might be, right, yeah, maybe not a full divorce, but at the same time, we have to really think about if the metaphors are still speaking to us, or if we're able to say, okay, look, we don't talk this way, but back then we understand why this worked. Maybe we even invite a conversation about a modern metaphor that could work. Another example of the way that Isaiah brings forward comfort, again, that's what we're getting back to, is the use of exaggeration. And this is, I think, just a great example. So, do we have a new reader? Annette, your hand's still up. So are you ready? All right, Annette's at the ready, please.
Kings shall tend your children, their queens shall serve you as nurses. They shall bow to you, face to the ground, and lick the dust of your feet. And you shall know that I am God. Those who trust in me shall not be shamed.
And we think about, right, when does exaggeration help heal us, right? Help comfort us, and when does it not, right? You know, we like to say words like everything's going to be okay. Well, you know what? It doesn't sound that much like an exaggeration, except it might not be the reality of the situation. So we have to think about, when does exaggeration work? I mean, on the one hand, yeah, right, those kings and queens, they are going to like bow down and lick our feet, right? Right? Given where we are, given the problems we're having living in Babylonia, and we just want to get out of here. And on the other hand, again, sometimes that works, like, yeah, and sometimes that really doesn't work. And so I invite us to think about what does that do in terms of how we think about this text at this moment that the rabbis chose to make the Haftarah after Tisha B'Av. Another image I really want to get to is literally an image of visual imagery here, which I think is fascinating. So see, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are ever before me. I mean, does God have a tattoo? Because Jews were not supposed to have tattoos. Like, what is going on? Is it henna? I don't think so. It's got to be more permanent. But it's really interesting in terms of this ancient pictograph, right? And it seems to resemble the open palm of the hand, right? And so we think of it, right, in terms of in modern Hebrew, right, kapit is a teaspoon. It's a, right, it can hold something. And so we think of this word for kapayim, right, the palms of my hands, right, the parts of our bodies that are in pairs end with ayim, like kitafayim, shoulders, and so forth. There are places in the Talmud that suggest that it's related, the word is related to kavanah, which means focus or intention. But let's just think about how often you look at your hand, right? Whether you're specifically looking at them or they just sort of get there. So if you have something engraved on the palm of your hand, you are presumably seeing it a lot. And you're really getting the focus that God is with you and God loves you. We have an understanding of an upturned palm signifies receiving. So when we envision God extending hands over God's people, it's palms down, shielding and protection. But and so too, right, when the Kohanim are blessing the people, it's down. But when it's up, right, it's about receiving, right? And it says, right, I have engraved you, not your names, right? We might think of the Kohen Agadol, right, with the high priest with the names engraved on the shoulders elsewhere, right, of the Israelites, of the tribes. No, I've engraved you is really an interesting idea of what does it mean, right? So, so this idea, it could be, and this is from Bridges for Peace. It's an interfaith group. It says, if we can take this image a bit further, God is not saying God is a list of names written on God's hand. There's not even a collection of faces. God's cup-like palm is filled with God's intimate knowledge of God's people, with their very essence, their fragrance, their sum and substance. And we think about hands otherwise, right? To fill in, right? So this idea that Israel is binding God's teaching on their arms and writing them on their doorposts. We might be thinking of a hamsa. I'm in my dining room right now, so you might see some of mine behind me. Right, this hamsa of kind of protection, right? We also see within this portion other hand or arm words for God. Obviously, we don't think God has them, right? But the idea of helping us to understand, they become kind of a metaphor and so forth. God will raise up God's hands to nations in one place, and God's arm will rescue in a different, right? But I love this idea of being engraved on the palm of God's hands, right? Ever present. And then we get to the very end of the portion with a connection to our ancestors. So Gabby, would you like to read these two verses, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Listen to me, you who pursue justice, you who seek God. Look to the rock you were hewn from, to the quarry you were dug from. Look back to Abraham your father, and to Sarah, who brought you forth. For he was only one when I called him, but I blessed him and made him many.
So we touch base with our ancestors, right? And that always makes us feel kind of good. We're grounded. We know where we came from. We know what happened with them, right? And so even if we're stuck in Babylonia at the moment, we can look forward. There's an idea of it's mashal nimshal. The rock thing is kind of the parable, and then the application to Abraham and Sarah, right? And so started with one person, and then I'll say two, but anyway, and then went forward into many, right? So the last three verses are these two verses and one other. And the final verse of our portion as the rabbis chosen, remember we started with God forgot us, right? Zion is forgotten and all of that, is we get to this one. So Annette, do we get your voice one more time? That's what you get for keeping your hand up the whole time.
Truly, God has comforted Zion, comforted all her ruins, made her wilderness like Eden, her desert like the garden of God. Gladness and joy shall abide there, thanksgiving and the sound of music.
So thank you. So there's a tense that I just learned is called prophetic perfect. We got to start using that one. That's a good one. Where the assurance of a future event is depicted as having already occurred. God has comforted Zion, comforted all her ruins. This hasn't happened. They're still in Babylonia, but this is the vision of what could be, right? There's a proclamation, as Eitz Chaim commentary says, of this, to underscore the new moment and to bolster the nation's resolve. The prophet concludes with a proclamation of assurance and utopian vision, right? So as we look forward, let's think about what happened. And I really like how the New Jewish Publication Society wrote this. This is the Banyas National Park in Israel. I think to me it's the closest I can get to Eden. And so we read, looking to the past, the people may restore their future. Acting for the future, the nation may overcome their past. The renewal of Zion is imagined as nothing less than a renewal of Eden, a transformation of exile and the blight of history. The homeland will be paradise regained. So again, this is a portion that the rabbis chose to try to bring comfort, to complement this cycle of comfort following Tisha B'Av, which began, like I said, with God, or Isaiah saying, God has forgotten. Zion keeps saying God forgot us, but no, wait a minute. A number of verses later, here is what we can look toward. We might feel a little bit uplifted. So the question really is this, right? Are you consoled? Did it work? So anybody want to raise their emoji hand and speak, or just speak, and we'll see if it works. And I'm going to remind you, as people are hopefully figuring out how to do that, of what, at least Caring Bridge, they're not the ultimate, but what they said to us about what does comforting mean. Let's remind ourselves and let's think about, okay, wait a minute, did what the rabbis chose from Isaiah work this week? So, any thoughts? It's very quiet. Okay, yay. All right, Mark, what do you got?
Well, I just keep thinking, even since Shabbat Nachamu, guys, from Isaiah 40, because Israel is so much in my mind right now, and our hearts, I keep thinking of all these verses being directly applied to them in the land and all the stuff that they're going through, and also the different Jewish communities around the world are experiencing anti-Semitism, because the big question I'm sure people were even asking on October 7th, where was God? The usual, where was God question. So I keep thinking, Nachamu, Nachamu, comfort my people. That's what Israel needs a lot right now.
Agreed. And I think that one of the things that this does is actually bring us together because we're all reading it, right? And so that does provide some comfort. Joel, please.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to go back to the question you asked in the beginning. What is the role of a prophet?
Okay, so the introductory essays in prophetic voices is fabulous. I actually love to teach that because the first thing I do when I teach it is I ask people if they were creating a job description for a prophet, what would it be, right? And I don't like the answer that it's only about speaking truth to power, though that's a lot of it. In this case is a great example, right? It's also about providing comfort, right? But to my understanding of a prophet's role is largely to get us to do something, right? And so Isaiah needs to get these people moving, that when they can go back to Jerusalem, you got to go. You got to have enough energy to go, even if you're using some of the local dialect in your regular speaking and things like that, right? But it's a hard question in a sense, because, as was said last week, there's so many words of the prophets. And by the way, as much as Isaiah shows up throughout the whole cycle, it's still only a small portion of what he has to say. So part of it is what the prophets say, and I don't mean to make this more complex, but part of it is what the rabbis chose from within those portions, right? And what I'm trying to challenge us to do a little bit is to say, did they choose well, right? Is this providing comfort for us? And I'll go on because I'm aware of the time too, though. Hopefully we can, have another question or two if there are any. So this is my question, right? When will you put Isaiah's words into action? To whom will you bring comfort? How will you bring comfort? And how will you allow yourself to be comforted? I mean, I think that if the Haftarah really does punctuate the time of year, and if we are prophetic Jews, right, we practice prophetic Judaism, it's not just, oh, okay, that was nice. It's what do we do with it, right? So if this passage was able to bring comfort, then, the ones who most need comfort at the moment, and in the fullness of the Jewish world, right? We think of Israel, as you said. What more can we do? We got to get on this. Or if we think of the people in our own world or our own need for comfort, how do we express it to others so that they can be able to respond in a way that is meaningful to us? Okay, there we have it. If there are other questions or comments or anything, I would love to hear them, and I can now see the chat again, so that's helpful. Anyone? Yes, please, Miriam.
I think of Isaiah 45:7, where it said that God creates light and darkness and salvation and even evil, it is said. And I think those words of Isaiah of comfort can strengthen hope. And I think it's a specificity of Judaism to believe in the oneness of God and not say all evil that comes from a devil or something, but in all to see that God creates perhaps our suffering in a way as well, but that we hold on to him and believe that he wants our salvation, and he wants us to work for Tikkun Olam. And so these words, I always feel they are very comforting in that way. When I keep in mind, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And we cannot abolish evil in the world, but our Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor. So we must start and do the best we can. And so I think these words you have chosen, they are very helpful to get back on track or to stay on track. And I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, C. Feinson, whose first name I don't know, would you share, please?
Yes, a number of years ago, I followed up on a footnote in, I don't know whether it was in the Sidur or in the Chumash, but it was about two Talmudic stories that pertain to Tisha B'Av. The first was about the marriage of Jacob and Rachel, and that they were quite aware that Laban might substitute Leah for Rachel. So they had a series of hand signals to show each other that it was her, secret hand signals. And Leah, at the time, the thought was Jacob and Esau were twins and Rachel and Leah were twins, and it seemed natural that they would marry each other. And
All right,
Leah,
wait, you have to jump ahead to the connection to Tisha B'Av because Mara's going to get me in trouble here for the timing. So go ahead, tell us the connection to
well,
Tisha.
because it takes the background. It's very quick.
Okay.
But Leah was terrified
Okay.
to marry Esau. So Rachel showed her the hand signals.
Right.
Not only that, she hid under the bed, under the marriage bed. So when Jacob spoke to Leah, she answered. So jump forward to the destruction of the temple. And the story is that Hashem was visiting the site, and he was swearing that he was done with the children of Israel. He was going to let them fade into history. He wasn't going to bring them back. And so Abraham talked him into having a trial. And all the men who had represented the Israelites during history, the patriarchs, Moses and all that, they talked about how wonderful they had provided leadership. But Hashem focused on the story of Rachel providing comfort to her sister. And because of that, he was willing to rescue and bring back the children of Israel.
This is why we like studying Torah, because there's so many different stories. But I think we need to get to the other questions if we have time, Mara, or if we don't, you can tell me. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, Mara, it's up to you.
You know, we have prophets among us. I can't silence anyone. So if you need to leave, no problem. But we will hear from Fortuna and Gail, and then we will say goodbye.
And thank you all for being here if you have to leave. Fortuna, please.
Talking about being prophetic, the book of Isaiah, or people who sort of live by the prophetic words in the scriptures itself. I recall this morning as I watched last night and this morning, the families whose son was being taken as hostage. And I just sat down watching and I kept saying, oh Lord God, comfort these people, comfort them. And then I remember the book of Isaiah too. I think it's Isaiah 43 that says, those who wait upon the Lord, you would strengthen them, they would walk and not be weary. And like, I kept prophesizing this, and I'm like, as they wait on you, Lord God, do not disappoint them, strengthen them, renew their faith in you, turn all of this evil into something good. So, the prophetic books help us.
And I think that, as much as Judaism doesn't have traditional prophets anymore, we have new prophets anymore. We have the traditional prophets, and we have, I call them prophetic voices, right? Others from our tradition that are saying, go do something, get involved, right? And walk in Isaiah's footsteps, so to speak. So, all right, you get the last word, Gail, please.
Well, it works out well. Thank you so much, Rabbi Symons. I'm still learning. I'm still new and learning. So thank you so much. But I have a personal thing I have to say. I debated about this. I was there at your book launch that I live in Lidditz, Lancaster, which is near Lancaster, and I would sign on to the Pittsburgh JCC. So I knew about your book launch, this book, and even more so, I kind of knew you, but it's your husband I know. I did Musar and Sophist spirituality and his Monday classes with him. I miss him dearly. And then just quick, one more thing. Please say hello to him. And I'm so glad to finally meet you. I actually lived in Pittsburgh a long time ago before you were there. And just real quick, one more personal thing. I think both of you know my Rabbi Jack Pascourse at Shari Shamayim in Lancaster. So thank you so much, and so good to finally meet you, and regards to your husband.
Thank you.
And have a wonderful retirement.
Well, we're not retired, just saying, but but it's a small world and it's lovely for everyone to connect. And it really, I think, deepens our connection. We connect over sacred text. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to My Jewish Learning and everyone who participated. Thank you to Mara for
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you all. We hope to see you next week, and we'll be sure to ask Rabbi Symons to come back and teach for the My Jewish Learning world in some capacity soon. Okay, bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.